welcome. We're going to change it up slightly now. Until this point, we've had single persons presenting. We've had Paul Kett, we've had Richard Hilsden, we've had the wonderful Tia Priest. And that's been fantastic. I hope you've picked up a load from that. Remember, next week, you'll get some stuff through on demand. Right now, you can access on demand. Maybe you've been doing that during your lunch break. And if you have, I hope you've enjoyed that too. Remember to tweet. It's hashtag BAMEIL. That's capital BAME, Black, Asian, and minority ethnic. And the I, lowercase, for into, and then the capital L for leadership. You can also find these wonderful people from Dods on Twitter. It's at BAME_leadership. And so if you're a tweeter, you can get on there and share your feelings, your reflections, your comments on Twitter. So what did I mean by that? We're changing things up. Well, we're going to have a panel. We've got a fantastic panel. No expense spared in bringing this fantastic panel together. At least two of them earn tremendous amounts of money in their day jobs, but they've arrested their busyness to be with us. They're here to share their reflections and their thoughts about overcoming barriers and maintaining our resilience. How have they done it? How do they recommend doing it? They're going to speak to you shortly. Who are they? Well, we have Dominic Arthur. Now, my note says he's a director of strategy and change at Civil Service HR. I've just been told that he may have recently changed role. Well, in a moment, I'll hand over to Dominic and he can explain some of that in his allotted time. Following Dominic, we're going to hear from my dear friend, Karen. Karen Campbell-White is a Deputy Director of Communications at ONS. I've been in the civil service long enough to know that's the Office for National Statistics. And in fact, this month, I will have served 37 years in the civil service. I have to pinch myself when I say that because I can't but quite believe it. Although today I'm actually looking my age, which is 56. And finally, to cap it all off on the panel, we've got Murryam Anwar. She's the Northwest Area Director at the Cities and Local Growth Unit at BAYS. And we'll be hearing from her too. Now, here's the way it will work. For somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes, each of our panel members will share their opening remarks with this heading, overcoming barriers and maintaining resilience. I think each of them have got some slides, so be ready and prepared for that. You can, as usual, pop your questions, maybe your thoughts and comments into the chat. We'll pick them up. That's my job when we come out the other side of those three presentations and we have a discussion as a single panel. The session will run for a full hour and it will take us to our next comfort break. So pace yourselves as you go. I'm going to get out of the way and invite my friend Dominic to share some more. Dominic, over to you.
Good man. Thanks, Rob. Appreciate that. I've just been asked to share a bit about my journey. I call it my race to the civil service with specific reference to race. Make that what you will. But I'll probably take the next sort of, 8 to 10 minutes just to set that out. I'll use about 4 minutes of that to talk about my journey. So some of it will be a bit rushed, but we can delve into that if you wish for during question times. I'll then spend the next, the full 4 minutes, 5 minutes after that, again, talking about perhaps a few tips, if you like, that I've had to pick up during my time or during my journey, mainly around, overcoming barriers as I see them and maintaining my resilience. Hopefully some of that will resonate. For those that don't, hopefully we can discuss that afterwards. So this is me. This is me when I was a little baby. I was born in Ghana as a little child. Grew up in Ghana and moved to the UK when I was 21. I suppose my starting in Ghana was a bit mixed, if you like. I didn't grow up in an affluent family, if you like. My parents worked really hard to bring us up. It was during, there were times in Ghana where, things were, during coup d'etat times and things improved steadily from that. Ghana is a very stable country now. But that's where I was born and grew up. Went to university in Ghana and I moved into the UK when I was 21. when I was, it might be of interest, but when I was young, the three careers during my journey to 21, the three careers that I wanted to get into initially, perhaps looking back, it might be because of the time that I was growing up, my early years, my formative years, but I wanted to join the military. Turned out my mom didn't want me to when I grew up and mentioned that. The second thing, for some reason, I wanted to be a carpenter. I'm not a very handy man, so that also didn't work out. And the third one, turns out that at some point my mom and I had a conversation, and I wanted to be a pope. So as you can tell, I haven't succeeded in any of those three. But in terms of my journey, when I moved from Ghana to the UK in 1999, it was as a new immigrant. I mean, for me, that is one of the barriers that I've had to overcome. That in itself is a big challenge. Different culture, different country. Different ways of doing things. I came with a dream. I must admit, the first few years was very tough. I did various odd jobs just to get myself ready. I came and I got admission to do my master's soon after that. But I came on it's no longer in place now, but a visa that was called the working holiday. So you could work and travel within the UK. And then I applied and got into university. But between the time I arrived and going into university to do my master's at UEA in Norwich, there were good times, exciting times, times of dreams, if you like, but actually quite probably some of the toughest lives I've ever lived. And hopefully I'll tap into a couple of those in a minute. For example, there were times that some of the odd jobs that I did, I worked as a cleaner in a mortuary, and I keep going back to that because that taught me a lot. That taught me, to an extent, things that I didn't, taught me that I didn't want to work in a mortuary at the very least, but also how to relate to people. Some of my cleaner colleagues, it was a diverse group of people, but some of them had long careers and had gotten to that place where they were looking for something to ease them into retirement. And others were, like myself, were starting up in life to an extent. I tried, as a degree holder, I tried to find various other jobs, but I couldn't. So I did that cleaning job. I did some other jobs. Sometimes I felt that, whether rightly or wrongly, when people heard my accent at the time, judgments were made. But I had to battle on, as with many things. I learned from that role. I also did various factory jobs in Norfolk, Thetford in this way. And then, I got a job in this time in Brixton in London with McDonald's. So I worked in McDonald's, 5 different stores. I hasten to add. I learned some great deal about relating to people. And then it turned out that I was moving to Norwich to start my master. So I spoke to my line manager then, and he said, "Oh, there's a new store opening in Norfolk. So if you want to go and start there." So I joined that. It turned out it was 30 miles away from Norwich, so I had to get a bus in and out. And there were times I had to sleep at the bus stop because I had missed the last bus. I was too shy to tell my McDonald's managers that I had to leave on time to catch the bus. In fact, I was also a bit nervous that I might lose a job. It was a coveted job for me. Others might see McDonald's as a first job. For me, it was a deal. It was a great stepping stone for me. It was the first time I had a permanent job, and I rated that quite highly. I helped set up various other ones. I worked in 5 different stores and learned a great deal from that. Went to university, did my master's, left there. When I finished, I joined Aviva. I mean, back then it was called Norwich Union. Again, a great place to learn about pensions, which is, for someone who wants to be a pope, I suppose another P, pensions, not too far from that. But, pensions has been one of my core anchors throughout my career. Left Aviva in 2007 to move into consulting with Aon Consulting. I did various roles, had various opportunities and challenges, but certainly looking at it with a positive eye, various opportunities at Aviva. And then I moved to Aon Consulting in 2007, did various roles, supporting various organizations with their pension schemes and advising various ones. 2 roles later, but 2 roles later, but in 2015, moved to head up the BAE Systems pension scheme. Again, same principle really. It was broadly sort of pensions, HR, and operational delivery. So leading a team managing BAE's 200,000 pensions scheme membership. I moved from there not long after that to into the civil service. So 2 years later, from 2017, and my first role was deputy director of pensions. So again, that brought me into it. And actually, that plays into some of the sponsorship messages that I have. Is when I moved into the civil service, the interview, and I went through what at the time I felt was a very long interview process. But actually, the person that was chairing the panel was someone that I had worked with previously during my time at Aon Consulting, and that tends to feed through some of my stories. It's people that you meet, you don't know where next you're going to come across them, either through sponsorship or other means. In 2019, I moved to become Director of Strategy for Civil Service HR, so working for Rupert McNeil, reporting to Rupert. And again, I learned a great deal of things there. And as Rob alluded to, my current role is Director of Government Recruitment Service and Pensions, so Civil Service and Royal Mail Pensions. And if you've got any questions on recruitment or pensions, I can talk about pensions all day. So this is me. The next slide, hopefully you can see it, is the photo of me the first day that I arrived in the UK. I have put on probably about another stone or so, not much more, but that was me when I joined, when I moved into the UK, 12th of August 99, with full of dreams at the time. I'll move on to my final slide and perhaps just set out for me, and I've been asked to talk about sort of overcoming barriers and maintaining resilience. And for me, my key message really is the bottom one: is if I can achieve anything, then you can achieve even more. And I can talk about barriers all day, but actually for me, it's more about looking beyond that and looking for ways that you can get over them. They say, I can't remember whether it was Obama that said to me, he said it, I don't know whether he was the originator, but certainly, if a wall is built, you can try going through that. If you can't, then go around that. Would be my message. It might have been Muhammad Ali, actually, so apologies if I've got that wrong. In terms of tips, so I'm focusing mainly on realizing your full potential and overcoming barriers and maintaining resilience rather than leadership. So, other thoughts could come in today if I was talking more broadly about leadership tips. But I've got 5 things really that I wanted to talk about. So be yourself, know yourself, and look after yourself. So it's about you, really, and what's right for you. And there's nothing wrong with being selfish. And I've said that to many of my mentees, that actually sometimes you have to be selfish, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's very important that you are self-aware, you know what your strengths are and your areas of development are, and be yourself. One of the best advice I've had throughout my career, was given to me by my girlfriend at the time, was be yourself because you're good enough. This was a time when I was trying to transition from one person to another, because I felt that being an immigrant person with my accent and everything, that knowing some of the barriers that I had, that if I don't change who I am, I'll never succeed. So and since I have that advice, I've tried to be true to myself and to be myself, and there's nothing more liberating than that, and that actually makes me perform better and tough if you don't like me, in terms of me being myself, because as I said to a line manager previously, I want to bring my whole self to work, because if I bring part of me to work, you won't like it and I won't be able to perform to the best of my ability. So be yourself, know yourself, and look after yourself and your well-being. The next one for me is lifelong learning and development. Take something from every role. I talked about my days in McDonald's. I talked about my days working in the cleaning in the in the hospital. the mortuary in the hospital, but I took something from that, and I can talk a lot about lifelong learning and development. But I think the message is there, and again, we can go into a bit more detail if need be. The next one for me is building networks and sponsors, including in your current role, and I'll probably focus a bit more on the latter part, so include in current role. Many times I've heard people say, yeah, my line manager is this, my current line manager is that, so I want a new role. I have found in my journey that even when, and there's been occasions when I don't see eye to eye with my line manager, or I have had issues with them, but I've always thought that, and tried to maintain a good relationship with them, and I've always being a believer that your best sponsors, your biggest sponsors, can be your immediate, the people that you work with immediately, either now or in the future. So just trying as much as possible to maintain a good relationship where you can. Of course, there will be times that it's not appropriate to do so for various reasons, bullying, harassment, and others. But that's the extreme for me. I'm talking about ones that perhaps are a bit more challenging. Try and build a good relationship. The example I'll give is if I'm looking for someone to fill a role, more often than not, if it's on temporary promotion or others where you can make a decision on who, one would go and speak to the person's line manager, and the line managers will always give a view. So I would encourage you to do that. The next one I've got is be careful with your criticism and generous with your praise. And this is I put that in quotes because it's something that I learned growing up through my university years. I was a member of Lions Clubs International, and that has been one of my watchwords, my watch phrases. I don't always get it right, but I think sometimes one can be quick to judge and be quick to criticize. And I'll rather err on the side of being generous with my praise. I feel that from a well-being perspective, your own well-being perspective, being kind to others actually benefit me rather than just benefiting the others. I feel that it gives me a sense of, it builds my purpose up. And actually sometimes when I'm angry, one doesn't achieve anything by being angry, but when you're angry, it also wears you down. So I try as much as possible. Again, I don't always succeed, but I try as much as possible to be careful with my criticisms and generous with my praise. Just finally, be the first to accept change. Throughout my career, that's something that has helped me realize my full potential. Is when there is change, I try as much as possible to spend little time worrying about the change. They say change is the only constant that we've got now. And you will always have change, and you can either spend a month, a week, a day worrying about the change, or you can accept that. I feel that some leaders might take that negatively if you try to over challenge. Of course, help to shape that, but help to shape that in a constructive way, and then to be blunt, get over it, and then accept it and make the best out of it. There has been, I could talk about a couple of roles, one at Aviva and one at Aon Consulting, where I feel I got into the role because I had accepted the change and moved ahead of others and my competition. So that's it from me. Thank you for listening, and I'll stop my sharing now. Back to you, Rob.
Wow, catch. Thank you so much, Dominic. We could run the rest of the day just doing questions from that. Lots flooding in, but I'm not going to take even a single one, colleagues. I'm going to move straight to our next speaker. Her name is Karen Campbell-White. She's the Deputy Director of Communications at ONS, Office for National Statistics. Karen and I bumped into each other at one of these events, actually, is my first recollection in Birmingham, as I recall. And she shared some of her journey, both on mic and, in fact, off microphone too. And it's a fascinating one, full of joy and pain. I'm not sure what she's going to share with us today, but Karen, you're looking fabulous, and it's over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rob. So I'm only going to spend about 5 minutes talking a little bit to you about achieving your potential. Rob's right. I have been working now for about 25 years, currently working in the civil service as Deputy Director of Comms at the ONS. And what I wanted to do today was just to, I suppose, just to share a little bit about my journey, but also to, I'm hoping the slide's working here. Let me just.
We've certainly got your first one up, Karen.
Fabulous, thank you.
Yeah, and the scroll.
So I suppose the first thing to note is I think I've spent my whole life living by a certain philosophy, and that philosophy has all been about having a positive attitude to life. So it's very easy in life to focus on the negative, to focus on challenges and things that go wrong. I think I have found it's far more of a discipline to focus on opportunities and learnings and how you can move on from situations. So I really like this quote. It doesn't matter where you start, only that you begin. Because for me, what that says is that regardless of how much or how little you have starting off in life, you have the power really to kind of make choices that can make your life even better. Certainly, you know, when my parents came to the UK from the Caribbean, they had high hopes of what to expect over here. You know, my mum was in nursing, my dad had previously been in the police, and they very much felt that they were coming to the motherland. And that was not what they experienced when they got here. My mum ended up getting a job working in an ice cream factory, and one of my kind of early reflections of her kind of popping around to the neighbours to give them some ice cream or some gift, you know, and them saying no because they wouldn't accept anything from someone black. And my dad, you know, for all of his intellect and all of his, you know, great career in the police service, the only job he could get was working for Roberts, the radio people, so kind of building radios. So I think, you know, as I said, I think for me, there's something about a mindset which takes opportunities and says, okay, so how can I make this something that really works for me in a positive way? And my parents have always taught me not only to have self-belief, which I think is really, really important for anyone wanting to achieve their success, to have that confidence in yourself, but also to recognize that you have greatness within you and you can achieve anything that you put your mind to if you're willing to put the work in. So over the years, I've read many books that have purported to tell me, you know, how to achieve success. Everything from Sheryl Sandberg and Lean In through to The Secret, 30 million copies sold, through to, you know, Covey's, you know, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And what I'd say is that there are lots of fantastic books out there that will give you pieces of that puzzle. And actually, I commend them because I think there's a lot to learn from kind of investing in yourself in that way. But for me, there's a higher level thing here, and that's about taking the time out to really understand where you want to go, understand what the steps are, the journey that you need to take. When is the right time for you to take that and begin that journey, and why? You know, what's your motivation? Because actually, when you start along your career and you're really focused on whatever that goal is, that why becomes one of the most important things, because that will sustain you when things get hard, when you get challenges, because that will keep you going despite some of those difficulties. I wanted to kind of highlight to you, I suppose, a couple of things. One, the importance of having that self-reflection. So on the left, you'll see something called the Johari window. And that's the idea that there are things that you know about yourself that other people don't know, things that other people know about you that you don't know. And basically within this quadrant, it kind of shows you how we never really have a full picture of ourselves. For me, what that means is it's really important to spend that time self-reflecting. It's really important to have people around you that will challenge you, and really important for you to recognize that there's always something to learn to help you perform it even better. I think over the years, the other thing that has struck me is it's not just about getting on a particular kind of career trajectory. It's also about understanding who you are as a person, what makes you happy, what your values are. Because I'm sure that you would have covered earlier today the importance of personal integrity and, you know, being someone who is your whole self at work, and that you're kind of honest about who you are. And that kind of touches a little bit about what Dominic says about, you know, managing with kindness. All those things are so important. So I think sometimes, you know, for me personally, you know, sometimes we don't always spend the time to think about these things, you know, with such pursuit of, you know, the job, the career, the next grade, that we don't always think, well, actually, does this organisation have values I agree with? You know, is this the kind of boss I want to work with? You know, is this going to give me the kind of lifestyle that I want for myself, for my family, for my network? Is this going to give me everything I need? It's not just about a salary, and it's not just about a title. I think there's also something about finding people who can help you on the journey. So sometimes it kind of makes me laugh, because people kind of talk about sponsorship and networks and coaching, all of which are really important. But I'm a sponsor of the BAME network at the ONS, and one of the things that I often hear from people in the network is that not everybody gets to get access to those sponsors and networks and coaches, and there's people that can help you on the path. And yet when you speak to people who are successful in their careers, they will have lots of people that help them along the way, okay? And that's just part of life, that's just part of careers. So it's really important to find people that can help you, not only help you define where you want to go, but also help you to get there as well. And those people could be it could be such an array. It could be someone that helps you spiritually. It could be someone that you can just talk to and offload at the end of a bad day. It could be somebody who is in the job you want to get into and can give you some advice. There is no limit on the numbers of people that you can have in your corner helping you to get towards your goal. So I think there's something about just taking time to reflect upon that. I think also for me, the thing I've learned is the importance of development. So one is always learning, just like it's one step to each day towards your goal. You never stop learning. So whether that's learning from people above you, below you, peers, you know, outside of your organization, there's always something to learn. And one of the things I found is that having an inquiring mind and being somebody who's willing to kind of be open-minded enough to learn new things and bring those back to your employer, that is less common than you think. and actually employers really value that. People who are can-do, problem solvers, willing to kind of embrace change, as well as willing to learn from others is something that's really important. And then almost kind of seeing yourself and looking at your toolkit and thinking, okay, so what do I have batting in my corner? Who or what is going to help me to get to where I need to get to? Part of that, the reason I kind of said having kind of realistic expectations about the role, because you do hear about people getting to the role and then thinking, oh, I didn't think it was going to be like this. I'm not sure I really want this. So there's something about, again, through talking to people who are in that job, trying to make sure that you have a full understanding of what that job means. When I have kind of coached new managers in the past, they've said to me that one of the things they found hardest is moving from like having that kind of peer-to-peer, you know, everyone in together kind of teamwork, to suddenly being the boss and people looking at you differently, treating you differently. And people have found that a massive cultural leap. And this is about making sure that you are prepared for all of those things. As you move up, you have a realistic expectation of what's involved in that. Now, the only reason I put this slide in weathering was just to flag that there's obviously a context to everything. And we know in life that there will be times in your kind of swept off path. But as I said, you know, for me, it's about looking at that in the most positive way possible. So protecting your personal space. You know, I've been that person, you know, at midnight, at 1 o'clock in the morning, working because I was so focused on my job. What did that teach me? If you drop, there's somebody else will take your place, is what it taught me. There's something about just valuing yourself and having those boundaries, which is just really important. So it's not about running the race as fast as you possibly can and burning out within, you know, a year. It's about taking each step in a measured way, doing what you need to do, but making sure that you always protect yourself and that you don't kind of compromise on your own well-being. Making sure you've got people both in and outside of work that you trust. Everybody needs someone to speak to and someone to kind of share experiences with and someone they can learn from. Making sure that you're getting those mentors and coaches. Now, quite a few organisations will have kind of mentoring schemes that they run. I would always be, really quite a little bit pushy here. If you meet somebody that you admire and you feel you can learn from, I would absolutely reach out to them and ask them to coach or mentor you. Sponsorship has been shown to be one of the key things that has been a difference between people moving up and not. So where you have somebody who's willing, when you're not in the room, to sing your praises and to say, yeah, this person's excellent, I trust them, they do a great job. Everybody needs someone like that. And therefore, I think seeking sponsorship is incredibly important. And again, when you talk to people who've been really successful in their careers, everyone from the people at the very top of organizations will have people who've sponsored them and helped them through to get to move up. The reason I've said log your successes is it's really easy, again, when you're working really hard and you're really focused, to forget all the things that you're achieving. And for me, there's something about just keeping a note. It doesn't have to be anything, flashy. It could just be a notebook where you just, that thank you email you got, that bit of praise that your boss gave you, a supplier or, someone you worked with who really valued your input. The reason I say this is that the data shows that Black people are more likely to be to have challenging performance reviews, and therefore there's a practical thing here about just having a log of all your successes. So when you have your performance, you can say to your bosses, I'm really ambitious, I want to move up, look at all the amazing things I've done. And this isn't just me saying this, these are all these people that have praised me. So you actually are using those people as advocates for you. And it also means that when you go to interviews, you've got lots of really practical examples of where you've excelled, because you'd be amazed how many things we forget because we're just busy going on to the next task. And then, yeah, again, it's just this whole thing about resilience. Resilience is so important. And this is why sometimes I find it annoying when people are in situations where their confidence gets knocked, because I think it's so important to be confident. And it's so, because that's the thing that keeps you going, really. Your confidence, your self-belief, your understanding of kind of, your skills and your potential. And therefore, recognizing that that's something you have to protect, recognizing that your resilience is made up of lots of different components, and this is something that's really going to be key to your success. So some practical things again, you need to set goals that are specific and measurable and achievable and time bound. Accountability is really important. So making sure that you are accountable. So if you're saying, this is where I want to get to, you tell your friends, tell your family, so they know that this is your goal. But also recognize every step, every positive step you take towards that goal. Invest in professional development. As I say, we never stop learning. So make that investment. A lot of people you'll speak to will say, oh, I'm too busy to do a course, I'm too busy to read a book, I'm too busy. Actually, the fact that you're on this conference today shows that hopefully you recognize the importance of investing in yourself and your career. And that's something we must do all the time. Making sure you've got that support structure in place. So whatever your circumstances outside of work, nobody can achieve anything on their own. So it's about making sure you've got those support structures so that you can do the things that you need to do. I'm a real believer of affirmations. I think they're really powerful. So having that little kind of 5-10 minutes at the start of the day, when you lift yourself up, when you affirm yourself, when you kind of get back to who you are. And there are various things you can, if you Google, you'll find all sorts of different affirmations you can kind of try. Having role models, so people that you can look to and that you can kind of learn from. The reason I said project manage your path is although I've never worked in project management, I work with lots of project managers. So part of my role is to deliver the census next year. So you can imagine that's a huge program that needs to be managed. And I think there's something about, almost seeing yourself as a project, and thinking, okay, so how am I going to make sure that I get to my destination? How am I going to manage that actively? No, I'm not going to take anything for chance. What will I put in place to almost guarantee my success? Because I think all those things are really important. Nobody's perfect. Everyone's got weaknesses. So again, it goes back to that area of professional development and working on your weaknesses. So you're kind of overcoming those. Making sure you're looking after yourself physically, emotionally, so exercise, food, building that network. And I think early on in my career, and still, there's something about listening hard. So going to the meeting and listening and watching and being really aware of the dynamic in the meeting. Because often people of influence, it's not necessarily who knows most, although arguably it should be. There's quite often a rhythm and a dynamic to meetings that it's worth learning about in order to know how to navigate yourself in them and be authentic within those meetings and to be heard. So the things that I did that worked for me were, I studied for a relevant degree. I was really quite bold in reaching out to various people to learn from them, to kind of ask for help or to invest in them as well. Very much somebody who said yes to opportunities, invested in my network, made sure that I listened and learned to others. Something about promoting your successes, because actually what you don't want is other people to tell your story. There'll be plenty of people out there who will want to define who you are and will say, oh, yes, you're this. It's really important not to allow people to do that, but for you to tell your story. And for me, what that means is that when I meet people for the first time, maybe a new team, a new boss, I will tell them who I am. This is who I am. This is how I lead. This is how I will engage with you, so that other people don't kind of layer on their own biases or their opinions on me. I think that's incredibly important. And then just lastly, celebrate every step. There's nobody will get to their goal straight away. It all takes a huge amount of effort. So if I could summarize it in 4 things, it would be: you need a great work ethic, so you need to work hard, you need to have that self-confidence, you need to be willing to break new ground. So you'll often be doing things that people may never have done before. Maybe you might be the first person in your family to do this thing. So with that, the 4th is you need to be fearless, because I think doing things for the first time, being that person who's willing to put themselves out there, it does take courage. And I think therefore, it's important to kind of recognize that as well. Thank you.
Wow. Wow. More questions flooding in. We've had so much expressed by way of values, journey, countries. Karen, did you mention which country your parents came from?
I didn't. So my mum was from Grenada. My mum's from Grenada, and my dad is from Trinidad. So
Grenada, Trinidad, and Ghana in the house. This is beautiful. All coming here for all sorts of reasons. And you both, Dominic and Karen, forging a career in the civil service and doing some very high profile work to boot. Thank you both so much. We're going to get ready for questions. They're already coming through. We've got one more panel member left. I alluded to possibly all of our panel members having slides earlier. I've been reliably informed that Murryam does not have any slides. Murryam Anwar is in fact the Northwest Area Director for Cities and Local Growth Unit at BASE. As seasoned a civil servant as I am, I can never keep up with what BASE stands for. So maybe Murryam will tell us what that is, because it used to be Business for Energy, Innovation and Skills. I know it's not that now, but it used to be, I'm sure. Anyway, over to Murryam Anwar, who's going to talk to us about resilience and overcoming barriers. Over to you, Murryam.
Thanks, Rob. And the acronyms, we're well known for for all of our changes. So it's business, energy, and industrial strategy. But it's great to be with you all this afternoon. As introduced earlier, my name's Murryam Anwar. So I'm the area director for the Northwest and Northern Powerhouse in the Cities and Local Growth Unit. So we work jointly across the business department and housing, communities and local government. I want to do 3 things. So I'll share with you my personal journey. I'll reflect on some common themes that I hear back from in terms of the mentoring roles that I do with colleagues and staff from BAME backgrounds, and see if that resonates with you, but also some of my tips that have helped me throughout my career journey with you all, and yeah, really keen that we open it up for a discussion as quickly as we can. So you might or might not be able to tell with my accent that I'm a born and bred Mancunian. From a young kind of age, have kind of worked and kind of lived in the great city of Manchester. My parents are from Pakistan, and that's my heritage. And I grew up in quite a white working class area in Manchester, which is Wythenshawe. So you might have heard about it. It normally is either in the media in kind of the 90s around having the largest council estate in Europe. But for now, there's been a lot of regeneration in the area. Marcus Rashford is from the area, has done a lot of work. You know, there's a big community spirit here, which, you know, I'm very proud of. And I think a lot about the life chances and opportunities that I had growing up, and if I was to grow up now, how different it would be. And both Dominic and Karen have talked about purpose and thinking about, you know, what drives you, what motivates you. And that's been a really important part of my career journey because of the community that I've come from, the place in which I've grown up with, the family around me. So I mentioned that my parents are from Pakistan. My dad was a market trader, worked in retail. My mum worked at Manchester Airport, and when she was growing up, she wanted to train as a pilot. And the reason that I want to share this story with you is because it was my grandfather who took her to the training academy and said that, you know, she wants to train, even though at that point they weren't training women to be pilots. And I think there is something inherent there about our previous generations that mean that where we are today and now, there is a history and legacy from that, which I hold very close to me as part of my own personal resilience. And I think is something that you should think about as well in terms of your own background and support, and also the decisions that you make now and how that will affect kind of your future family and generations to come. And I think that point of support and realizing your ambition and dreams, a big thing for me that I have taken from that, and I think there was a question in the chat about TED Talks, but as I've progressed on my sort of career journey, it's probably been the biggest setbacks that I've had that I've learned the most from. And I don't know if any of you have seen Brené Brown, but she talks a lot about leadership and vulnerability. And that was a really powerful thing for me, where when I was struggling to progress or to think about actually how do I move into a different space in my career, and actually facing some personal challenges, there's a real strength in vulnerability and having the courage to get back up from the difficulties we faced and learning from them and growing from it. And I would really recommend, if you have the time after today, to take a look at that TED Talk. And throughout my sort of career journey, what I've done is I've embraced my multiple identities. So I'm a Northerner, you know, I'm a Muslim, I'm a female, I'm kind of from a heritage of kind of British-born Pakistani, and being really proud of that. And I've used that in terms of where actually have I wanted to prioritize the areas and departments in which I work. So I have been within the civil service. I started as an EO in 2003. I mentioned that I was afforded life opportunities and chances that if I was growing up now, perhaps I wouldn't have had access to in terms of university. And so when I graduated, I got a job down in London at Cabinet Office, going back out to promote the fast stream to universities, to non-Russell Group universities. And knowing where I'd come from, I knew that social policy and delivery was a tool that for me was really important. I wanted to get into roles where I could deliver improved outcomes for the communities and places in which I cared about. And that's what I've done. So I'm known as someone who's a deliverer, who gets things done, who does it through networks and people. So I'm often, if I'm in a room with people, I'll be asking, how does that feel for staff? You know, what are the implications for the people that are going to be working in this agenda? And you know, it's been 2 years since I've kind of been in this role, and I am often the only person of colour within any sort of room, whether it's with ministers, whether it's with external stakeholders, whether it's within the department. And, you know, it's really important for you to use today and to use our kind of session with you to build on that confidence, because I was dipping in and out of some of your earlier sessions, and I think 38% of you said that you are maybe feeling confident about progression. We need you to be 100% confident in pushing yourself forward for the opportunities that are available to you, because of the work that the civil service does and in the public sector as a whole. We know that the COVID pandemic has ravaged societies and our most vulnerable communities and places. And in order for the civil service to be truly reflective, we need people across all walks of life in senior roles, but also in policy roles. And I don't see enough of us in those kind of key areas. And so I would really encourage you to kind of seek out those opportunities and networks. And I've had moments in my career where I've been sort of actively challenged about, why should I be on a BAME talent program? Why should I be getting promotions? I'm not ready for a promotion. I shouldn't be going for them. I've had to work harder than my kind of white peers. In my first engagement event that I did, it was in Blackpool, and it was with business leaders and council leaders. A retired business leader said to me at dinner, you know, where are you from? And my Wythenshawe in Manchester just wasn't cutting it. So, you know, proceeded to keep asking, and then said, where's your passport from? And then also said, you speak really well, insert subtext, for an Asian woman. And so, you know, this is the reality, that no matter at what grade you are, and in whichever department you are going to face potentially barriers, a question of, why are you in the room? And I want to use that in terms of summarising some of the themes that have come back to me from staff that I mentioned in terms of feedback. So whether it's facing microaggressions in meetings by chairs, by them not letting you speak, or if it's a white counterpart saying a point that you've said and that seems to resonate more, their point seems to land. We've mentioned before about performance management. Sometimes we know that for our BAME colleagues, actually there is a disproportionate number that are in performance management issue areas. I've had a lot of very recent conversations following the murder of George Floyd and some of the broader race equity conversations that are going on around the COVID pandemic, of people feeling like they can't bring that pain and emotion to show their feelings at work. And what I really liked about what Paul Kett said earlier is, you are not the answer. It is not for colleagues from an ethnic minority background to feel that they have to answer everything. Actually, there is a job for our white peers to educate and learn themselves. And thinking about progression and recruitment, there's been some real challenges on that. It's a constant theme that, you know, I get asked about. So what can you do about it? Well, events like this are super important. You know, I know that there's a lot of potential talent and ambition in the room today. So my kind of key takeaways are, you know, really understand your purpose and values. What are your roots? The unseen parts of you that are at your core and give you power, and how you present yourself to the world in an authentic way. That's where I think when things get tough, for me, it's been my real source of kind of power in getting through. Talking about leveraging networks and sponsors. So again, being your biggest cheerleader, finding people that you trust for help, guidance, championing strengths and coaching on development, but also resting to power up, asking for help and support, and really taking the time to think through your genuine strengths, development areas, thinking about what legacy do you want to leave. So as I was talking about my mother and my grandfather, we've all talked about our family background. How does that help? So I'll pause there, Rob, but yeah, just a kind of a quick overview from me, and hopefully we'll get time for questions.
Well, and it's only for that reason, with the amount that are coming in, that's the reason I've just appeared and trying to get across. Let's pause, not full stop, it's a comma, and invite those questions, because Murryam, I want to thank you for introducing further flavour into the question time. You've brought in Pakistan, you've brought in Manchester, you've brought in and reminded me what BAME actually stands for. But even more important than all of that, you've brought in elements of this unprecedented year, and you've explicitly referenced George Floyd. The COVID-19 was mentioned earlier, but you've put it into context about that which impacts on us as we seek to bring our very best into the workplace. So thank you very much for all of that detail. Of course, there's lots that you've all got in common. I can tell you, we're not going to get through them all. Let's just under promise and over deliver here. We're not going to get through all of these questions. I can tell you that. But one question that keeps came up after each of your presentations was this issue of sponsorship. And we've even got a couple of people asking, what is a sponsor? So feel free to dive in when I've posed the question. And you may want to include your definition of a sponsor. Maybe you've had one. Maybe you know someone who's had one. Maybe you've been one. Let's talk about what a sponsor is, because it will speak to some of our colleagues. But for those who do know, what's the best way to get one? How do you get a sponsor? Anybody who wants to go first? Don't be shy. Go on then, Murryam.
So I think you have to, everyone in this room will have a sponsor, even if they don't know it. So Karen was mentioning it's that person that will be championing you when you are outside of the room. So it could be your deputy director, it could be your team leader, but it's someone that really cares and is invested in your career, not only in your current role, but beyond. And so take some time to just, have conversations with senior managers in and around either your current area of work or that you are coming across, because you will definitely have someone.
Okay. Karen, what can we expect a sponsor to do for us?
So the sponsors that I've had, they've just been there to advise me, really. So it's someone that I feel comfortable enough to be honest about kind of everything, not just the positive stuff. I'm not just kind of selling an image. Someone who I can be completely honest with, and those people have given me advice, but they've also been the people who, where I've been in challenging situations or perhaps want to go for a new job, they've kind of been there to kind of advise me there as well, asking me questions that I wouldn't necessarily answer myself, really. So it kind of goes back to that Johari window, helping me see things in ways that I might not naturally see myself. So yeah, definitely the person who champions you. And actually, I notice other people getting, who are endorsed by sponsors. So even people who aren't sponsoring me, I'll be in meetings where people will say, oh no, this person's great at this, or why don't you give this project to that person? And a lot of it goes on quite naturally, but we don't normally put a label on it. We don't normally say, oh, you're a sponsor. But yeah, for me, that's just normal business. And I think you just need to ask people. So if you meet someone that you admire, that you feel, you could learn from, who you feel could play a pivotal role in your career, I would just, and you don't have to say, can you be my sponsor? You can just say, can we have a coffee? I'd love to have a chat with you. Can I ask for some advice?
Yeah.
Quite often when people have got mentors or sponsors, they do it that way rather than kind of asking for that official permission. They'll just start that relationship and just start sharing and
Wow. Thank you, Karen. Dominic, what's the difference then between a sponsor and a mentor? I mean, it's pretty much the same thing, isn't it?
Almost, but not quite. I think, sometimes those two words are interchangeable, but I think, from my perspective, a mentor is someone, obviously there's a coach as well, but without wanting to complicate that. But a mentor is someone who can guide you, who can talk you through things, who you can test things with. But to differentiate that from a sponsor, someone once described it to me as the person who is in the room and who will set your case up for you because they know how valuable you are. And on this occasion, you're not in the room. So there will be times that you're not in the room, but the person in the room who's having those conversations, who's involved in those conversations, can, as Karen said, say, actually, this person can do that role, or this person can be effective. There will be times that there's probably a bit of a blurred line in between. There will be times that you would want to test with your sponsor about your next career move, and maybe they might mention a name, they might drop an email to someone else to say, actually, I'll sponsor this person, because it's also about them putting their reputation on the line. Leading. Hence why I made the point earlier that actually, because to an extent, sponsors have to know what you can do to be able to put their reputation on the line. There are times that they're happy to make that leap of faith without knowing you. But most of the time, people are more comfortable doing that, knowing what you come up, what you deliver. So, your line manager, his or her line manager, and the one, so someone in your leadership chain can be a powerful sponsor, but it need not be that. It could go outside that as well.
Brilliant. Love that. This is great. We've got about 10 minutes left. Let's see if we can rattle through some quick ones, although there are a lot of thumbs alongside some of them. I'm going to blame Karen for this question. I think, Karen, you spoke to a lot of our audience because they want to know a recommended book, and you talked a lot about reading. So if you could name one, I know it's going to be hard, and I'm going to ask each of you, so get ready. Karen, one book that you'd say to this audience, go out, buy it, read it.
Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway.
Oh, Susan Jeffers, go for it. Why?
Yeah. Well, just because I remember early on in my career reading it, and I've often suffered from a bit of anxiety, and I think at the time I was thinking, oh, it's all too much. I'm being asked to do all these different things, and I read it, and it really did help me to see things differently. And I think a lot of my philosophy about just leaning into things, just doing it anyway, just kind of recognizing that fear is not necessarily a bad thing. That's just something, it's often just something new. So I think I just found it a really practical, helpful book. And it's, and I'm not saying, I don't want to kind of overblow it, but I've done some things that logically, someone with my background would never have done. Like I've traveled around Russia and I've done these things. Wow. Because I've just been like, well, why not? Yeah. Someone's got to do it. Why not me? Well, I just try. I just put myself out there. So I just found it really positive, really positive philosophy. Yeah.
So if you didn't catch that, folks, it's Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Susan Jeffers. I bumped into a friend recently, Karen, and she said, well, Rob, fear is only false evidence appearing real. Yeah. False evidence appearing real. I love that. Murray, I'm going to come to Dominic last because he's got a library where he is. He's going to choose one from behind him. Murryam, over to you. One book and why?
So Brené Brown, Rising Strong, it talks a lot about courage. I mentioned earlier about vulnerability. I think when we talk about resilience, it's how do you bounce back kind of in a strong and kind of quick way. And it talks a lot about trust. So whose opinion should you really trust and kind of seek out? And I think a common message from all of us on the panel is ask for help, seek guidance. But also be courageous. We need you, and we need you kind of at your full potential within government. So put yourself forward, please.
Yeah. And what's the name of the book again, Murryam?
Rising Strong.
Rising Strong by Brené Brown. I do love a bit of Brené Brown. She talks a lot about, in this data-driven world, she talks about our personal stories being data. They're data with a soul. I love that. Data with a soul. I've watched that TED Talk several times. It's beautiful and wonderfully put. A fantastic blog, by the way, written by a former permanent secretary, Claire Moriarty, on vulnerability. So if you're still there, you can hop on, former perm sec at DEFRA and indeed DexU. But Claire Moriarty has spoken openly about vulnerability in leadership. A beautiful blog. Do check that out, colleagues. Dominic, we're coming to you. If you'll let us into your library, choose one of them and why.
Oh, I've opened things. I've chosen one from the bottom, Rob. It's called The Great Lives. And it's a bit of an odd one because it's a collection of obituaries.
Okay.
And, you know, without wanting to name drop or anything. So this was given to me by Rupert McNeil.
Okay.
And it tells various stories about people. So it's effectively obituaries, but it tells stories about them. So it's a Times newspaper collection of all the obituaries, but it delves deeper into the people's lives. But it tells you about a variety of people of different race, ethnicity, experiences, professions, and how they carve their lives. My dad once told me that it's always good to see someone as a someone that you look up to. I've always said that, two people I look up to, two males, Nelson Mandela and my dad. But actually, there will be things that in their lives that you might think, when you look at their lives, learn from the positives from their lives. There might be things that they could have done better. Nobody is perfect. And then you try to improve that. You'll make your own mistakes. But this has been quite a good reference point for me into people's lives, and areas that I can learn and areas that I can help improve.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I, without even realizing it, I'm always drawn to obituaries. I read them regularly. And I'm always thinking about, the life lived and what we are now celebrating in that life lost, at whatever point the life is lost. If you're all happy to, Dominic, can you lift that book up again? I'm going to take a picture of you holding it up, if you're happy to. Where is it? Is that book nearby? There you go. Hold it up. It makes for such a great picture. And then Keris behind you. Just lower the book a little bit. There you go. Lovely. We'll do some tweeting with that. Lovely. And I'm reminded, when you spoke about obituaries, we're going to have one final question for everybody. But when you spoke about obituaries, I was reminded of something I read in Stephen Covey's book about 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he spoke about, imagine you've gone to a funeral. Imagine the church is packed. You've walked into the funeral and the body is lying in state. And you're making your way to the front to see who it is. But this funeral is packed. You're waiting to hear the speeches. What are people going to say about this person? And as you look over and into the coffin, you see that the person is you. What would people be saying about you? What is the legacy that you have left?
How powerful is that? So powerful. And I mean, Murryam and others have talked about sort of purpose. One of the things that I always talk about personally is about the legacy that one leaves. I mean, we can talk, this is another topic for another day.
Absolutely.
So
we're giving them ideas for their next conference. So my final question, and if you can, keep it to 60 seconds, no more, because people want to have their eyes out the screen for a while before our penultimate session. If you could speak to your younger self, the day you stepped into the civil service, what would you say to that person?
Don't let anyone put you down, and whatever you want to do, do it.
Wow. Don't let anybody put you down, and whatever you want to do, do it. Loving that. Your younger self, what would you say, Dominic, to your younger self?
Be yourself and believe.
Be yourself and believe. Are we catching this, colleagues? Are we catching this stuff? It's super. This may make its way into a book. And to close us out, Karen Campbell-White, what would you say to your younger self?
I think I'd say something about the power of networking, of telling your own story, because it's not just about being head down and doing the work. It's about making sure people know doing the work and that you're getting acknowledgement for the work you're doing. So the importance of that, I think.
Wow. I love that too. I'm jotting this all down, I'm recording all of this, and they're my pearls of wisdom that I'm going to take away. Something Karen's just said reminds me of something that on your shelf, actually, top row, I think it is, Dominic, Nelson Mandela and the long walk to freedom. But in there, he talks about winning my battles makes me stronger. Sharing our stories makes us wiser. Nelson Mandela, Long Walk to Freedom. Thank you all so much for arresting your busy schedules and being here with us and sharing your pearls of wisdom, sharing your stories, that data with a soul. Enjoy the rest of your day.